Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage our first panel, the Tech Yourself Candidate Framework Guide.
Hi. How you doing? That's hard to follow. Thank you, Tim Ryan. Very cool. So we are the Tech Yourself team. Let me just start by really quickly introducing what this project is. It came out of our conference last year. So like I said, we're making it rain this year with solutions. So last year we realized that candidates running for office have literally no idea what they're doing when it comes to running a digitally savvy campaign. There are two problems. The first is that we tend on the left to sink too much money into radio and TV and not use digital media enough. Yes, right? And the other thing is that there's a sea of 300 tech tools out there, and it can be completely overwhelming what to use. And so candidates have literally been walking into walls trying to figure this out. It's the era of Citizens United. There's no time. They have absolutely zero energy for this and no framework. And so we've decided to turn that around. And we're doing that with something called the Tech Yourself Guide. So the Tech Yourself Guide is the first ever digital framework guide for candidates. We wanted it to be 120 pages. It's 217 pages. And it started 8 months ago when we thought, gee, that was a really good point everyone brought up last year. Everyone has no idea what they're doing. So now they will. Welcome to the Tech Yourself team. 8 months ago, I called these maniacs. There's actually 10 of us. 6 of us could come today, and I said, hey, you guys are the foremost digital experts in the country. You have run every campaign known to man, woman, and child. Will you please write a guide that tells everyone what to do? Will you emancipate this information so we can level up on the left? And they did. So I'd like them to each introduce themselves to you, and I'm going to play a little game here. We're going to go this way, and they can only use one sentence to describe themselves. We'll start with you, Megan.
Hi, I'm Megan Clausen. I worked in digital advertising for about 10 years, most recently for the J.B. Pritzker and Hillary Clinton campaigns.
Woo!
I'm Mario Piscatella, and I'm addicted to campaigns and the delusion that we can do this better.
The achievable delusion, Mario.
I'm Beth Becker, and I am a digital strategist / trainer coming to a city near you probably next week.
She's probably going to drop an F-bomb, and I love her for that. She's hysterical.
Good morning. My name is Callan Martinez. I'm a former state party ED. I've worked in politics for about a decade, and I am a daughter of a proud union family.
Woo!
Hi, I'm Michael Kurtz. I'm a Michigan-based campaign consultant and campaign manager.
Hi, I'm Kevin Pujanowski, and I have a background in tech and corporate strategy, and I'm really passionate about bringing that to the state and local level where we really want to level up.
Woo! So we talk about heroes here, and it's a room full of heroes, but often we're behind the camera. Megan was laughing yesterday. We did an 11-hour shoot, which was all of the tech education video guides that go along with the Tech Yourself curriculum. And Megan's laughing because she's the person that sits there and gives JB his messaging points, right? JB Pritzker, she feeds it, he says it, she feeds it, he says it. And yesterday she was on camera, and I was feeding lines to her. And so that's what this is about, getting these people that are quietly making massive change into the limelight. So I want to talk to you guys. You really are heroes. They could have charged $50,000 for this information to some candidate lost running for Congress that was desperate. They could have done that, but they didn't. They chose to take a steep pay cut and put it all in the guide. And I want to ask you why. We'll go this way again. I want to ask you, what did you see in this that you think is going to change things?
I think it's so important that campaigns at all levels, whether you can afford, a high-end consulting firm or you're somebody running for local office, that they have access to the tools and technology that they need and that they understand how important digital is to their campaign. So for me, it was about making sure that campaigns at every level for Democrats across the country had access to this information.
For me, it was about the fact that technology is improving cycle over cycle, but the access, availability, and quality of training is not. We need to do better about sharing information, about hiring better staff, and understanding what it is that we're actually getting when we're buying these tools and we're bringing in new team members.
I mean, for me, it was just more training is better training. I'll do any kind of training I can do. We don't have enough of it going on. And this was just another way to kind of level that up. And what I really loved about the guide, when you see the guide, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But a lot of times when we talk about campaigns, what you do at a presidential level doesn't always scale down to a school board or city council race. And the guide made a really conscious effort to talk about the big picture, but to also kind of level these campaigns so that someone who's running for city council isn't being given advice that's really only appropriate for a presidential, for example. And that's really important.
Yeah, when Genevieve introduced the project, it was a very ambitious project. I hadn't seen anything really like that before that combined so many aspects of the tech landscape, and this is just information that candidates need to know. Candidates, you know, they have to be able to go out and talk about their policy issues to the public, but they have to be expert campaigners, and I really thought that this guide was gonna help no matter who the candidate was, whether it's a first-time candidate at you know, school board level, all the way up to a congressional or you know, large Senate race. So to me, putting my time, effort, and energy into this was because we want our candidates to be experts at what they're doing in the field and talking to people and winning races.
Yeah, for me, what attracted me to this project, and to echo a little bit of what Mario said, is we see a very high staff turnover on campaigns where you'll train a lot of staff and a lot of volunteers every cycle, but then they're not going to be involved in a campaign the next cycle. And so we need kind of a baseline to make this easier and faster for campaigns to get up to speed on what tech is available and how to implement it on their specific campaigns.
The only piece I'll add to everything that's been said is I'm really excited for digital strategy to move upstream and earlier in a campaign. So list building and fundraising aren't just happening in the last 3 months where everybody's paying attention, but it's really a 12, 18-month, 24-month cycle, even on the smallest campaigns.
So we covered a lot in the guide. There was so much to say. The two big issues we're finding is that, you know, we're not doing our digital spend correctly. It's usually about 40% of your budget on the right that's spent on digital media. On the left, we hover between 20 and 30%. And again, we're still sinking stuff into radio and TV, stuff that's really hard to track, and frankly, the return, it just isn't there in a lot of areas. So we covered a lot of other areas as well, and I'd like to throw it to you guys again around the circle. Talk a little bit about the area that you worked on and why it's so critical.
I worked on the area of digital spend, specifically advertising. So I think a lot of people, you know, say right now, you need to spend money online, you need to invest in digital advertising, but oftentimes campaigns who don't have access to, you know, consulting firms, they don't know where to start. So oftentimes when I've gone around the state talking to different races, they'll ask me, well, how much should I spend on digital persuasion? And it's like, well, I can't really just answer that question for you. There's a lot of questions that need to be asked to get to that answer. So one of the areas we worked on in this guide was coming up with a formula for helping campaigns determine what to spend on digital persuasion, which we'll be releasing. And I also worked very hard on trying to put together some best practices for digital creative. So once you figure out how much you want to spend online, another important piece of that is how are you getting your message across effectively? And that's not just taking your TV ad and putting it online. It's a completely different experience. It's even a different experience when you're thinking about how people consume Facebook versus how they consume other platforms such as YouTube and Hulu. So we've tried to explain some of that. We've tried to explain best practices for creative. One of the biggest things that kind of gets people that I say is, you know, when you're scrolling through your Facebook feed, you don't have your audio on. So if you put a TV ad on Facebook, people literally aren't going to get your message. Not to mention the fact that people typically watch a Facebook video for an average of 3 seconds. So if your TV ad, which typically has an arc of setup, story, message, that's never going to get the message across. We need to think about creative differently online and think about how we're investing our resources. So that was the part of the guide that I worked on, and we're excited to share with you.
As somebody who is perpetually bouncing from state to state and campaign to campaign, I came into this as the data guy, although that's not technically my specialty. As a campaign manager, it is my specialty in understanding that the data is shit. It's shit in nearly every state, and it's just degrees of what's a little bit less shitty as we go around the country. And it's been like that for decades. And so as a campaign manager, a lot of our decisions are based on shit. We have to do this better. We have to understand that it's bad and that it needs to be worked on both in short-term and in very long-term thinking. And so that's how I came into this and what I wanted to see improved. And I hope that any of the state parties represented are understanding this and putting the efforts and investments into making it better in their own states and their own localities.
So I worked on the section dealing with digital strategy, specifically email, websites, and surprise, social media. And for me, it was really important to focus on giving candidates not so much all the best practices, because frankly, we do a lot of that, and I do a lot of that, and it's kind of boring to read. But for me, it was more about giving them the questions that they need to be thinking about and asking themselves as they evaluate and make decisions on what tools to use and what platforms to use. So for me, I was trying to focus less on here's the best practice for a Facebook post, or here's the best practice for a tweet, and more about here's what you need to think about when you're deciding which platforms to use. And here's what you need to think about when you're thinking about your list building tactics and strategies. And why are you building a list? And why are you sending email? And kind of like that big picture thinking that we can't really teach people regularly, but this is something that is a framework for them to start building their digital strategy with.
So I am an attorney. The section that I focused on was the legal section, the coordination section, which we've heard actually some interesting things about here today, especially from the DNC. I would say the legal section is basically just meant to explain, again, to new candidates or experienced candidates how to make sure that you are following the law, avoiding ethical complaints. Those are distractions that happen on campaigns, and we want to keep our focus on winning the campaign. Also, as a campaign manager, field director background, I think my sort of input on the other sections was sort of about the 10,000-foot view of the cost benefit that Genevieve was talking about, where we want to spend dollars and where we see dollars as effective, whether that's to spend $1 to get more money in the campaign, spend $1 to pick up more voters, and the sort of cycle that every campaign goes through to continue to build momentum through the campaign.
Yeah. So I worked on how to structure your campaign, your staffing, and your budget with the end goal that you don't end up cannibalizing your digital spend. So what happens a lot of times in campaigns is because you can wait a significant amount of time usually to put up your major digital buys, and those things come a lot quicker than the process that you have to go through for TV buys. Oftentimes when campaigns get into a crunch, the digital budget will be the first thing that gets reduced out of that because it's the easiest to do at that time. But if you're able to set up your campaign in the right way and able to budget responsibly, that won't happen. So that's really where I focused on most of my efforts.